I'm doing great. I love the mug in the background.
Thanks. I have the mug here too.
Oh, nice. Do epic shit. Yes. Where are you joining us from? Where are you at?
I'm in Vernon, BC.
Nice. So today we didn't really make a list at all, but your mother wrote this fantastic summary of what we were going to cover. So I want
I'm
you to
really
help
excited.
guide. Yeah, I want you to help guide the questions. Um, and answer what you're comfortable with. But I have to start with, what was it like being raised in a punishment-free household? Was it truly
Well, first,
punishment-free?
I need to make it clear I was not a dog, um, but it was like a dream.
It was like a dream.
Yeah. There were always
I don't think
Skittles,
many people could. Okay.
but I don't actually remember getting a lot of them. They were usually for other kids who came into the house.
Okay. Super thin schedules of reinforcement, it sounds like.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with, um, I guess there's usually two questions. I usually ask people, how'd you get into the field? Let's start there. And then I'm curious what you're doing now as well. Can you tell everybody?
Yeah. So I got into the field of behavior analysis in kind of a roundabout way, even though I grew up kind of in it. I did an undergrad in therapeutic recreation, and by my fifth year, I decided I don't want to do this. Um, and then mom had really been waiting for that the whole time. She sent me an email and said, with a link to the BACB website, and said, I think this is something you'd really enjoy. And so I said,
Yeah.
well, might as well try it. I didn't really know anything about ABA or behavior analysis or anything before that, so I kind of went into it blindly. But it turned out that growing up in a punishment-free household, I already knew a lot of the stuff in less punishment-based world.
Yeah.
So a lot of the principles I already knew. I'd read Don't Shoot the Dog. Um, I'd been a TAGteach guinea pig for years. So I'd been doing a lot of TAGteach. So I'd also been kind of doing a lot of stuff based on the principles of ABA without knowing what that was. So once I started my master's, it was pretty logical. I was certainly behind on the terms. I sat in class with my laptop open, Googling what's a MAND, what's a TAC, what's an SD. Most of the people in my program had been working in the field for a while, and so they knew what everything meant. So there was a lot of really fast Googling and trying to work that out. But yeah, that's kind of how I got there.
Super cool. What are you up to now? What's your day-to-day like?
So yeah, so I'm working in the Okanagan. I cover kind of a 2-ish hour stretch, and I do almost entirely parent training. The way the funding is set up out here, the kids get fixed amount between ages 1 and 5, and when they turn 6, that amount decreases significantly. Um, and the numbers don't work out for IBI services. There's no, you can get about 6 hours a week of service, which isn't enough, as we all know. So there's a big focus on parent training out here because centers just, there's not enough funding to run them.
Yeah.
So the idea is that if we train the parents, which we should be doing anyway, but if we train the parents to work as a instructor therapist or behavior interventionist, whatever you call it, they can be doing kind of ABA with their kids all the time, every day. So I spend most of my time in family houses, um, training parents, spend a lot of time talking to the parents, figuring out what the issues are, watching the kids, playing with the kids, modeling for parents, do a lot of BST kind of training. And more recently, we're starting to do some group stuff with some kiddos.
Some what stuff?
Some groups, like kind of social groups and that kind of thing.
Okay. Nice. Cool. Yeah, I mean it's relevant. I've had like a little bit of a pulse on it, but it sounds like there's a whole mess up in funding streams in Ontario.
Yeah, so
Is
Ontario
that
is actually
affecting
changing their
everywhere?
funding. Pardon?
Is it just the Ontario area, or is it going to be sweeping
So
across?
Ontario's funding right now is changing, and what they've proposed is pretty much exactly what we have here in BC. But Ontario's funding was different, and so the families there are really coming together to push for a change. Whereas I think I am new to BC, I've only been here about a year and a half, but I think that it's always
Okay.
been like this here. So parents don't necessarily, or people don't necessarily know what it could be like. So that's something
Yeah.
also that I've been talking to parents a lot about is advocating for their kids and just kind of figuring out the systems in BC to see how we can best advocate and what we can advocate for, what that
Yeah.
will look like. That's definitely an uphill battle, but
Yeah, no kidding. Sean Pogson wrote in, he said parent training equals parent power with the like strong
dude.
emoji. Yes, very much so. That's cool. That's a very different day to day than folks in the States on average. Like parent training's after the 30 hours of billable or whatever it is that you're doing. It's not really
Mhm.
included. Do you incorporate tech teaching in that sort of work?
I do where I can. So have quite a few families who are interested in it and who have asked me about it. Usually, once they ask me about it, we start to use it. I almost always talk about it in my first session and where we might use it. And then, depending where the family's at, we'll bring it in. So far, mostly for kind of the kids who are really slower, a lot slower to develop skills. I'm using it in a lot of those settings, um, more so than kind of school age kind of kids. We use a lot of tagulators though. Almost every kid I work with, the tagulator, and even if we're not using an actual tagger, we're using a tag point and a tagulator. This is a photo of me, myself on the right in the Old Navy sweater, and my sister and mom and Karen in Boston. Oh, it looks like you're back maybe.
This was the first trip to Boston to meet Karen.
Yeah, yeah. So this was a kind of a first TAGteach seminar where I think it was a seminar. We went. I think this is the same trip, but we went to meet Beth Wheeler and do some tag teaching with her dancers. So Jen and I got to tag along.
Cool. Tag along. Haha, I see what you did there. And then we'll get to that. We also have this cool video. Can you tell us about the video?
Yeah, so this was when I was working on getting my BCEA hours. I was working in a IBI center in Toronto, and we did almost entirely precision teaching stuff there. Kevin Colley was my supervisor, and we did a lot of tag teach. So we did a lot of combinations of tag teach to teach the skills, and then precision teaching to measure the changes, take the data. The video, this little guy was working.
Is this in the line?
I'm being told not to talk to him.
Is the paper in the line?
No.
How about now?
No.
Oh, have you watched this one twice?
No.
It doesn't matter. No, these little guys.
Yes.
What do I get? All right, your turn. Take away this paper and line. 10 tokens.
This is 10 tokens.
10 tokens. Okay, now the tag point is this hand on paper. Three choices. Wait.
So that was at the IBI Center. That little boy was learning some pre-printing skills using the Houghton Learning Center printing program. He's doing some, I think his take point was originally dot to dots, and he was drawing lines with some prompts in there. But he was trying to print with a pencil on paper. It was like not to the table, and his hand wasn't on it, and it was like on the other side of the table. So he was reaching, and the paper was moving all over the place, and he wasn't having a lot of fun with printing. So we added some tag points for pre-printing. So you saw him doing paper in lines to get it in the right spot on the table. So we were using some targets, some chalk lines on the table, which we later faded. And then the second one was hand on paper, so that if he had his hand in the right spot, the paper wouldn't slide all over the place. Someone said, did he like the TAGteach? So at that center, like I said, we used a lot of TAGteach, so all these kids were pretty familiar with it, and they frequently requested it. So we'd have the taggers like out where they could see them, and they would sometimes bring them to us. And then this was a different little boy, but also working on printing in lines. When asked one day, I think he was frustrated, and they weren't using the tagger, and he came running out and said, paper and lines with the tagger and the box. So I think that they like TAGteach.
Right? Elizabeth Houghton's curriculums are awesome. I recognized it as soon as it was there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's so much like care, and like there's this like homegrown component to it, you know? Like the way it's designed. It doesn't look super I don't know, like boxed and corporate. It just works. and it was designed just to work. Yeah. Super cool. So what is your thoughts on this summer? What are you thinking about presenting on? I think it's already been crafted, right?
Well, I have a title. So I'm going to talk mainly about prompting, shaping, and targeting, or capturing, shaping, and targeting as a alternative to physical prompting. So I think that's one of the, kind of like I said in my title, that's one of the main things that training animals has taught me about training people, teaching people. I'm certainly not a professional animal trainer, but I grew up in a house where we used a lot of clicker training with dogs and ferrets and bunnies and whatever other animal showed up at the house. And you don't use a whole lot of physical prompting with, say, a gerbil. It's really hard to physically prompt a gerbil to do anything. They squirm out of your hand. They've got tiny little legs. It's just not possible. So if you're going to teach a gerbil to do something, you have to use something other than physical prompting. You could use targeting, you could use shaping, you could use capturing. And so those are kind of the three things that I'm going to talk about, because I find that they're underused in the human teaching field. We rely a lot on verbal prompting, we rely a lot on just talking at people, giving instructions, physical prompting. And I think that shaping, targeting, and capturing are often better alternatives. They're less aversive to a lot of learners. I don't know if anyone has ever physically prompted you, but I hate it. If someone comes behind me and like takes my hand to do something, I'm like, just let me do it. Give me a tag point. So that's what I'm gonna focus on in that talk. And then maybe we'll talk about a little bit of TAGteach as well. I don't know.
Nice. Am I coming through still?
Yeah.
Yes, no? Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Woo.
That's my title.
There it is. Shaping and targeting and capturing. Oh my. How training animals has made me a better people trainer. I was going to share that on mine, my experience. I worked in a fish lab, where it was the same sort of situation where like you're all of a sudden kind of have your hands tied from what you're used to. You can't grab a fish and prompt them where to swim and like where to go. Um, and it seems crazy, but it's the same story on like it taught me just the most subtle little changes in the way that you do something can alter the learning and the outcomes or the chain of behavior, whatever. There was so many things there that I learned. I remember coming in later after when I was like managing the fish lab, and there was folks that would come in to learn throughout a semester, and you would see them shape up the craziest patterns in like the in the tank where fish would like swim to different corners and all over the place, and you to get these crazy chains of behavior shaped up because of the most like subtle little differences in when they were delivering the food, for example. And then the other part that was really interesting there was the water as a medium that we're not used to interacting with. So I used to tell people, like, imagine if you put a token down on the token board, but then the current kind of swept it away, and the child stands up
Mhm.
to grab it. Like what you just did is you reinforced the standing up and like getting away from the
Right.
table. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you
so there's
can't
some
do
super
a lot of
cool.
physical prompting with the fish.
Yeah. No.
I mean, you could
Especially
try
goldfish that are like this big.
push it through the hoop. Yeah, I think everyone who's working people should train an animal first, but not like a dog or dogs are too easy. Train a fish or a gerbil or something weird like that.
I haven't seen any more comments. Um, or questions. Sorry, Teresa said it's hard to physically prompt an elephant. And horses as
Yeah,
well. That
I
makes sense. Sean said teachers are often prompt dependent and not the child. Smiley face.
bet.
Oh man, I agree. If we could only teach all the best ways. So, ooh, we have one here from Sean. Did you ever get any negative comments growing up with TAGteach?
um, we got people who didn't want to use it because they didn't want to be trained like a dog or whatever. But I don't can't think of anybody saying like I think our friends used to kind of be like, oh, we're using dog things for to teach you high jump and that kind of thing. But we all played like games with the tiger, so kind of like the shaping game, but with the tiger. So we would
Yeah,
one person would be the guinea pig and the other people would be or the dog, I guess, or the learner, and the other people would have the tigers and the other people would decide. So we had our friends doing. My friends loved that game. We had people jumping in the pool and putting buckets on their heads and all kinds of things like that. So I can't think of any time where people were negative about it, but there's certainly been people who didn't want us to teach them or their kids that way. Although I find that
yeah.
oftentimes if you just start doing it, you get a much different reaction because it works and it's fun and everybody ends up liking it. Mm-hmm.
Um, cool. Okay, I dig this. This is perfect. I know you got somewhere to be soon. Let's wrap it up. Seattle,
Good.
July 19th, 20th, and 21st is the event. It's going to be super fun. The main event is Saturday and Sunday. Friday, we have some special events going on in the evening, so make sure you book in early. Anne is one of the amazing presenters. I'm stoked. Last year, you were helping on the volunteer squad, and now you're going to crush it on the stage. No pressure.
Well, I'm not going to do the what was it, the cha-cha slide, I don't think, this year.
No,
Maybe. We'll see. Maybe at the end we'll do the
maybe.
cha-cha
So we've got updates, speaker interviews coming. YouTube channel is up if you want to go watch some more content over there. ChatTcon,
slide.
we have the Facebook group. Um, there's lots of places to keep finding stuff if you're digging this. And thank you. And any last words of wisdom?
Do epic shit.